Hello, everyone. Welcome or welcome back to Deutsche Martini. I hope you're doing well and I hope you're having an amazing day. I am honestly quite excited about today's episode because I see this as a little catch up session, as a little update session about what I've been doing because I made a promise to you and to myself in the beginning of the academic year. And I know that the academic year only started a few weeks ago, but those weeks have felt like years. And what I want to talk about particularly today is the conscious efforts I have been putting into not wanting to run away from my life, not hating my life, and making my life something worth living. Now, this is a very exhaustive and extensive topic, so let's see what we can do. So, basically, I will give you first a quick rundown of why I decided to make this decision and what actually happened last year and what is it that I'm running away from and that I'm trying to prevent. So, for those of you who don't know, for those of you who don't remember, for those of you who are a first time listener, first of all, welcome. But last year was the year in which I was doing my pre-master at university. And I promise you, I'm not going to talk about university and academia in this episode either. I know I've been very academically focused in the episodes recently, and I can imagine that that is perhaps not everyone's cup of tea when it comes to time off and entertainment. So I promise I will not give any lectures and whatnot. It's just I'm trying to provide context now. So last year I was doing my pre-master, and after my bachelor, my entire social circle, but a single person, left either the city, either some of them left the country, and some of them left the continent. And some of my closest friends, some of my most favorite people, I didn't see. I have not seen since they left, which I mean makes sense. And I really, really struggled last academic year. What is interesting when your life is defined by academic years is that your year as a student has two beginnings. First of all, the 1st of January, the normal and expected start of a new year, but you also separate your life and time periods depending on the academic year. So when I refer to last year, please consider this as the last academic year up until and including this June. So when my friends left, I spent first the summer in Bulgaria, so I really didn't feel what it meant until I came back here. And I was no longer seeing my best friends on the daily basis. And sure, I kept in touch with them and I still do keep in touch with them. And I text my friends every single day and they know everything that's happening in my life and I know everything that's happening in their life. But the physical presence was not there. And I'm super thankful for technology and its development that has allowed us to stay connected across the ocean and to constantly be in touch. I think that if I were living in a different era of technology and I moved abroad, I would have dealt with things way, way differently. So now, because of technology, in a way, I can be many places at the same time, at least mentally or emotionally or spiritually, despite being physically in one space, in one place. And I really struggled with the fact that my friends were gone. I am not someone. See, that's the thing. When I'm in Bulgaria, I'm very extroverted and I'm very giggly and outgoing. But when I'm here in the Netherlands, I am way more introverted. And I think this stems from the fact that In Bulgaria, I have a support system. I have established friendships, relationships, and whatnot. Whereas here, when I came first, it was a blank canvas that I had to paint on, and I was way more cautious because I didn't know how to navigate the situation, because all my friendships in Bulgaria are very long lasting friendships. Like my best friend I met when I was 3 or 4, and to this day we've never had a fallout or anything like this. So most of my friendships are very long, like lengthy and long time relationships. And it was a bit difficult for me to navigate a new culture, a new life, a new completely different environment. It was also COVID times, living in a different language, being in a different country, being by myself, transitioning from childhood to adulthood, and not knowing what any of this meant. So when I came here, I became way more introverted, which I think was just deeply rooted in insecurity. Because just here, I had just myself to rely on. And as much as I loved back then to complain about my housemates at the time, and well, flatmates at the time, and how I was living with 8 other people and I was the sole person cleaning the flat, I am thankful that I got the chance to live with people, because this pushed me outside of my comfort zone, and in a way I was forced to socialize, because I genuinely believe that had I lived from the very beginning by myself, and mind you, lectures were still online, I would have really struggled socially. But with me sharing spaces with that many people, it was at, at least a bit more attainable to create contacts and build relationships. Some of those relationships are we sustained and are still very strong friendships. Others were just transactional or just very limited in nature, but that is fine. Not everyone in your life is meant to be there forever, and that is okay. And then when the university opened up back again and I started having lectures in person, I met 2 of my best friends, and we became like family throughout the entire bachelor, and they became my support system and I was theirs. And I really struggled navigating life with them not being here, because I had only known and experienced the city, the country, adulthood with them by my side. And at first, I really struggled to make sense out of what it means to be here without them. Because, and I know I've mentioned this before, but I was walking the same streets where once I made memories, but those emotions were in the past and they were no longer attainable to me because the people I shared them with were gone. And the space, the place, the time, the country, everything attained a new meaning with them gone. And I know it now sounds like I was very over reliant on those people to sustain me, which I really don't think was the case. I just think I really enjoyed our time together. And I really, really miss them, because this is a fault of mine that, which is something that also happened to me when I first came here. I look for people I love and people I don't know. So what I mean is, when I first came here a few years ago, I was looking for the counterpart, the Dutch counterpart of my best friend who I met when I was 3. And obviously, that is very unfair to the new people I'm meeting because I cannot be projecting like this. I'm not allowing them to be themselves. And it's also not fair to me because, like this, I am just setting myself up for disappointment because you cannot replicate at the time 16 years of friendship and just communal experiences in life in a month. And I noticed that I also did this last year. I was looking for my best friends and my new colleagues at university, my colleagues at work, and I just really, really struggled to make any friends, let alone close relationships. And this is something which I think should be destigmatized. And what I mean is should be destigmatized is the friendship building thingy. I think that so much emphasis is put on our friendships, and justly so, but there isn't as much transparency when it comes to how difficult it is to build and sustain friendships in your 20s, or maybe even further down the line in life, which I have not reached yet. And hopefully, if I'm blessed enough, I will get the chance to live, to experience that as well. But because it's so much easier to create friendships in, let's say, school, high school, middle school, elementary school, because you spend 40 hours a week with those people. You see them more than you see your own family, and you go through the same experiences together for the majority of the day. So either by proximity or by something else, you're connected. And then when you are no longer in high school, you have to make conscious effort, actively take measures to create and sustain friendships because they are just not as attainable to you anymore. And this, again, just something I struggled with last year. Last year was very difficult for me socially, but also because I just didn't know what any of it meant. I was at a new faculty, doing a new degree with completely new people, a completely different setup, and everything I had studied up until that point in a way seemed irrelevant, even though now I see the relevance and I'm like, oh my god, my bachelor makes so much sense with the master's I'm pursuing now. But when I was in the moment, I was so myopian, so nearsighted that I could not see the bigger picture. And I just avoided my thoughts at all cost. I was constantly consuming content because God forbid a thought occurs. God forbid I face a thought, and God forbid I deal with a thought or a feeling. Oh my God, a feeling. And this is something which over the summer when I was lucky enough to get the chance to reflect on what this past year meant, I realized that was very unhealthy. Last year was just a struggle. I didn't feel good, and I could not wait for everything to be over so that I could leave. I was gradually starting to hate my life here, hate the city, hate the country. And there was no one else to blame but me. But at the time, I blame it all on external factors, not realizing that I was just isolating myself because I was struggling to adapt. And as time went by, I became more adaptive and more flexible, and I did create friendships and I did sustain them, and they're very meaningful to me now. But back then, I was just like, everything is transactional, everything is temporary, and nothing has a meaning. And yes, I know I blamed it a lot on the weather. I remember I used to start every single episode with talks about the weather, and sure, seasonal depression indeed is something. If you don't see the sun for weeks, it definitely affects you. But that was not the core of my problem. The core of my problem was the fact that I didn't like my life here. That my life was something I wanted to run away from because I was someone I wanted to run away from. I just didn't know what it was like to be an adult here without those people, without those structures, and without that security of friendship. And that made me turn to myself, but I also escaped myself. It's very difficult to explain. But what I had the chance to reflect on over the summer led me to the conclusion that I did not want this for myself. And I know that there are many things I cannot control. There are many external factors which I can only react to rather than control. And I just promised myself that this year, this academic year, it being potentially my last academic year, it being potentially my last year in the city that I've spent the last 4 years in, it being potentially the last year I spent in the Netherlands. I don't know. I don't know what the future looks like. I was having a conversation today with my host mom from the UK, and she was like, so what's next? And I was like, dinner. Because I just really cannot cope. Oh my God, why am I tearing up? I am really trying to take life one step at a time right now, because if I look too far in the future, I know that in this transitionary period that I'm in, I will get overwhelmed, and an existential crisis is a given in that moment. And I just don't feel like I have the emotional capacity to deal with this right now, because I'm so overworked, I'm so overwhelmed, and it's a conscious effort to avoid it, which I know is going to bite me in the ass later down the line. But in order for me to reach a future point, I need to sustain myself in the present. Even if it is in a way an unhealthy coping mechanism, I am just trying to cope. So, because I was not happy with the way last year played out, I promised myself that this year, and like I mentioned, potentially my last year here, I will try to build a life I don't want to run from. Because with it being potentially my last year, it will be so much more easy to leave if I hate my life here, if I cut off all my relationships and don't have any friends, if I hate my job, hate my degree, hate a university, hate a city, hate a country. That would make it so much more easy to leave. But that would also make it a hell to live in. And like I mentioned a minute ago, in order for me to be able to enjoy a future, I need to take care of myself now. And I just did not want to live a year in an emotional and spiritual hell just for the sake of it being easier to leave further down the line. Because I would rather feel the pain of leaving something I love and loved than the ease of leaving something I hated. Because that means that I just didn't have a good experience, and I don't want that for myself. So what I promised myself in the beginning of the year, and I'm pretty sure I made it explicitly clear here on the podcast as well, I promised myself that I am going to put conscious effort into controlling the things I can control and accepting the things I cannot control, adjusting to the situation, and just overall trying my hardest to take care of myself and not have depression. And I want to reflect now about on the things I've been doing that have been helping me somewhat achieve that goal, or at least take steps towards the achievement of that goal. First of all, I would like to say that the things I'm going to reflect on right now are very mundane and they're very everyday life like. And I think exactly because I was not practicing the core part of life, I was struggling last year because I just perceived myself as this machine that was just supposed to devote its time and processing power to work and university, and my existence was just defined by these two realms, and I didn't have anything of substance beyond them. And I am just trying to perceive myself as something more right now. I'm trying to perceive myself as more than a student and as more than a worker. I'm trying to perceive myself as a human. And I know that the things I'm going to talk about will sound very trivial, but trust me, they are the foundation. And if you are missing that foundation, then the thing you're trying to build, the life you're trying to establish, is not going to be solid. And it will be a model that can very easily top over. So, first of all, hobbies. Guys, hobbies are so crucial and so overlooked. And yes, in a way, I did have a hobby last year because I did have Dirty Martini. And Dirty Martini is my favorite thing to do. It is the core of my soul and my existence. It is my diary in audio form. And I love nothing more than doing Dirty Martini. But I needed something else. I needed something. Not that Dirty Martini is not creative, but I just needed something physical in a way, because Dirty Martini obviously is just a podcast. And I also at times have struggled with seeing Dirty Martini as something that is my duty rather than something that's my passion. But I think I managed to pinpoint that early on and work on it and just perceive Dirty Martini as part of who I am and who I want to be rather than as something that I have to do, because no one is forcing me to be here. No one has chained me and told me it is 2 a.m. on a Friday evening. You need to record yourself for an hour and post it online for everyone to see and just establish a digital footprint that can and will be used against you in court. God forbid I have ever sued, knock on wood. But basically, this was something which changed my life fundamentally, turning back to my hobbies. What I have been doing is I've been creating more. I've been writing a little bit. I really forgot about poetry for a while, for more than a year, I would say. I think because Dirty Martini was my emotional outlet, I no longer needed to put my emotions into pretty words and rhymes, because I was doing this on the regular here. But I obviously don't want ever to stop writing poetry, because poetry is something I will forever be grateful for and thankful for, that I get the chance to do it the way I do it. And so I also persisted with my runs. I tried to go for a run every single week, at least once. I started drawing and I started coloring. I have this mandala book that I bought in my first year here, which I drew in, colored in like 3 or 4 times in 2021, and then I forgot about it and I bought it because again I was struggling mentally, and I was like, I really love mandala and coloring is something I used to love as a child. So obviously I was just thinking, let me combine my love for mandala, which there was a period of my time when I was doing mandala myself, and just trying to reconnect with my inner child. And I think this is what really did it for me. Trying to tend to the little inner me, because I was disregarding her so much. In my process of becoming an adult, I kept on forgetting that I was still a child. And I, in a way, will always and forever be a child. And I don't want to grow up. That doesn't mean I want to be immature. It's just, I would love to be able to keep this childlike naivety and also hope and playfulness. Because, guys, play is so important to us humans, but we overlook it so much because we always are like, oh, I don't have time. I'm so busy. I need to work. I need to study. I need to cook. I need to clean. I need to do that. I need to do that. I need to scroll on my phone. Play is crucial. And so I recently also re-found my love for crocheting. My thing is also, I really just obsess over something for a few months and then I just let it go. Like, for example, last year I was obsessed with Lego for a little bit because that was just the only thing that was keeping me intact, but also was keeping me broke. So, Lego, if you're hearing this, please reach out because I have this set that I'm super interested in, but it costs an arm and a leg. Doesn't matter. So I've been crocheting. I also, a side note, I've been wanting to buy a second bowl of the yarn that I started a cardigan with because I finished the first bowl of yarn and they're not restocking it. And I've been to the store every single day this week because I went on Monday and they were getting delivery and I talked to one of the employees and they were like, oh, we don't have it yet, but we just got delivery, so come back later in the week. They restocked the yarn, but not the color I want. And I have a very specific vision about this cardigan and I want it to be this very pretty, beautiful, just stunning blue because blue is my favorite color and this is the most perfect blue and I just want it to be a solid color. I don't want it to be many colors like the Harry Styles cardigan that I crocheted when I was getting ready for the Harry Styles Love on Tour. And so I started crocheting. Yeah, they are not restocking my yarn. And so I went and bought this velvet yarn and now I want to create a slutty backless top because there's no in between when it comes to crocheting. You're either making a granny cardigan or you're making such a CUNTY top that you're like, oh my god, I love this so much. And I love both of them. But I bought this velvet yarn and I'm very excited to work with it. But yesterday I tried to start my crochet project. But guys, why did nobody tell me how difficult it is to work with velvet yarn? Because I can barely see shit. And obviously it's blue and it's this very deep dark blue. And because it reflects the light, because it's velvety, it's just so difficult to see what I do. And I don't even want to think about fluffy yarns, which just like in my head, they are a torture to work with. Obviously, I've never worked with one, but they just seem like they would be so difficult to work with. So please pray that they actually restock this beautiful color because otherwise my cardigan will just be left a stage rectangular blanket that is 30 centimeters by 25 centimeters because yeah. Then I also made jewelry. Jewelry making is something which, if I could do anything in life and if money didn't matter, and I know now you could bring up the argument of money doesn't have to not matter for you to do this, but if I could do one thing for the rest of my life, it would be make jewelry. There was even a point when I was, trying to be like, oh, do I open an Etsy shop or create a podcast? Guess, just guess what I went for. And I really, really wanted to create an Etsy shop and just sell jewelry, because ever since I was a child, I've always made jewelry, which is ironic because I hardly ever wear jewelry. Because I used to be, well, I'm a Balkan girl. I'm a Slavic Balkan girl. I was born and I was immediately given golden jewelry and gold jewelry. Because this is just how the people back home operate. Like, you're a baby and you're given a gold necklace and gold earrings, and then they're like, why are Slavic women pretentious? Girl, come on. But because of gymnastics, I could not wear jewelry because that was a safety hazard. In fact, there was this girl who was part of my team who was wearing hoop earrings, and one of them got stuck in the net of the trampoline and just her ear ripped off. So obviously they just forbade us from wearing jewelry at all, especially at competitions, but also during practice. No rings, no earrings, no nothing. No nothing, because it was just dangerous. And I think I've mentioned this before, I'm a lazy gal when it comes to the way I look, which is why I unfortunately don't wear makeup. Guys, I so want to wear makeup and I keep buying makeup, but I'm always just so lazy to put it on. But also, I went to this drag show. I'll tell you about it next time or some other time if we don't have the time today. And I put on makeup and I felt so incredibly confident, not because I had makeup on my face, but because I put an effort into the way I looked. And I think this is what the goal of makeup is, to give you confidence because you took care of yourself. You spend time on the way you look. So maybe one of the hobbies I will pick up is makeup. So yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, I just don't wear jewelry because I was very lazy to constantly put it back on and take it off before and after practice. And so I just stopped wearing jewelry altogether. I've been trying to wear more rings because I love rings. I love rings so much. I think they're one of the best accessories out there. And yeah, ironic that I don't wear jewelry, but this was something I grew up doing. I would make so many bracelets from so much so many different materials, and earrings as well, and just so many rings and necklaces and anklets. Like, the people in the beads shop, they just knew me. They knew that when I would go there, I would spend at least an hour just looking through the materials, and I would obviously leave with like a solid purchase because I just love it that much. And I really, at a certain point, was heavily researching on how to open an Etsy shop, but I just never did it, which in a way I don't regret it, because that's my thing when it comes to hobbies and things I love that I do for fun. I am scared that if the money aspect enters the picture, there is the potential of me no longer enjoying the hobby or whatever it was the way I used to anymore. Because now it would be transactional, it would bring meaning to my life beyond happiness, but it would be like, I don't want to. Obviously, people say, oh, turn your hobby into your career and you would you would not have to work a day in your life because you would be enjoying what you do so much that you would not feel like you're working, and you will be making money doing something that you love. And I think that's beautiful, but I think, for me personally, the way I operate in life, that's bullshit. Because if the financial aspect enters the picture, and trust me, I was today really debating, oh, should I do a money talk or should I do this? Next week is the money talk. we have a lot to talk about when it comes to money and my perception of money and how it affects my life and just my financial education and financial choices. Just because of my financial culture and the way I operate when it comes to finances, I know that if money entered my favorite hobbies, I would no longer practice them with that big of a passion, and I would see them as something I have to do rather than as something I want to do. So maybe in a way it was a good thing that I didn't open the Etsy shop, because I never want to not make jewelry. I never want to hate jewelry making, because to me that is the definition of my childhood. And another crucial thing that I started doing, and then we'll start reflecting on what this all means, is that I started reading. And the thing is, in my day-to-day life, I read a lot. I read a lot, but I read academic literature. I read surveys, articles, textbooks in preparations for my next lecture, my seminar, my tutorial, my presentation, my exam. I read with an end goal, or I read because I have to, not because I want to. And if there's two things when it comes to hobbies that defined my childhood, it is jewelry making and reading. And I love reading. I would like to perceive myself as a book rat who is, however, or was a little bit on the bench for a while when it comes to the type of things I enjoy reading. Not that I don't enjoy the academic literature, because if I didn't, I would not be here pursuing my master's, but just literature that is not study related. And that doesn't mean that it has to only be fantasy books or whatever. You can still read nonfiction. Just literature that you chose rather than literature that was assigned to you. And now, here's the thing. I always thought, especially last year, that I didn't have time. I didn't have time to crochet. I didn't have time to make jewelry. I didn't have time to color my books. I didn't have time to read, especially reading, because I have so many books here and I buy books constantly, and I just never got to read them because I never had time. And now, a year later, I can see that, sure, I was struggling a lot. I was occupied a lot because I was working a lot and I was studying a lot. But also, it wasn't that I didn't have time. I wasn't making time. And I'm not talking about dedicating 3 hours of your day to hobbies and just 10 minutes, literally, because 3 hours a day is not realistic with my schedule. I still work 5 to 6 days a week and have 3 to 4 days of university. My days still very much look like from 8 to 10 or even later in the evening. I have long days. But I started two things. I started consciously taking breaks, because during those long days, I don't get a chance to take breaks. And I just try in the evening to take a conscious break, because I know I reflected on this recently. The only time I would rest was when I would be asleep. And this is not a conscious break. My mind, my consciousness, myself cannot comprehend a rest if it's getting it only in a unconscious state. So, first of all, I started taking breaks, and I'll explore that in a little bit. But second of all, I started making time on the daily basis. Literally, what I have done is I have put this book that I'm reading right now next to my pillow. It sits in my bed, and there's just no way I don't encounter it every single evening when I get ready for bed. And what I do, and I'm talking about 10 minutes. I know that 10 minutes seems like it's nothing, but trust me, if you're someone who, for example, has been like, oh, I'm going to stretch 10 minutes every single day, the 10 minutes still requires a bit of commitment. Even though it's so little, sometimes it is those 10 minutes that we struggle to commit to the most, rather than the 2 hours of scrolling on Instagram, which we all don't seem to have any problem committing to. So, what I do is every single night before I go to sleep, as I lay in my bed, there's no way I don't encounter that book. I open that book, and because it's a very easy read, it's written very attainably, and the chapters are very short, I read 10 pages a day, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but that is better than nothing. And sometimes, if better than nothing is the best you can do, then that's what you should do. So, while everything else in the day I may perceive as something I have to do, and just me responding for duty, like me going to my lectures, me going to work, those are things I have to do. Me reading the book 10 pages a day, literally 10 pages a day, is something I perceive as me choosing me choosing me time, me choosing my peace, my rest. And it is the concept of it rather than the execution that really makes the difference, because it serves as a reminder, first of all, of me taking a break, and second of all, me consciously taking an effort to add another layer to my life. Because like I mentioned, want my life to be more than what I study and what I do to pay my bills. I want to be more, and I'm committed to being more. And even if those 10 pages a day signify this for me and symbolize it for me, then so be it. I will be sticking to my 10 pages a day. And I know you may be thinking, oh, 10 pages a day is really not a lot. Yeah, but still, if it's a 300-page book, you can still read 12 books a year, which, sure, for bookworms and book rats, it may not be a lot, and this might be something they do in less than a month. But for people who have a very busy day-to-day life, or are struggling to just take the time to go and sit and read, that's enough. You don't need to compare yourself to someone who's like a professional book rat. You can do it just to enjoy it. So another crucial thing, which I forgot to mention, is I stopped saying no to plans. I have become more social, and I reach out more to people. When people reach out to me, I don't decline offers. I go to more places, and I make the effort to go out at least once per week. Sure, it's not always an option because I also work on weekends, and like I mentioned, I have very long days. It's okay to say no every now and then if I cannot, but last year I was saying no simply because that was my default answer. And if I keep saying no to people's offers to going out, I don't have the right to complain about not being social or being lonely or being alone. And if there's something I love, it is my right to complain. And in any situation I do, I'm always motivated. In everything I do, I'm motivated by sustaining my right to complain. At work, why do you think I work as hard or clean as well as I do? Because I love my right to complain about the way other people do their job. And I don't know, this makes me sound like a bitch. I promise you, I try not to be one. It's just, I have been trying to at least slowly but steadily turn my life here into something I no longer need an escape from. Because I am trying to finally consciously choose myself and consciously choose life over mere existence. And what I wanted to reflect on is the breaks. I am someone who overworks herself a lot. I don't know how to rest. The concept of rest is something I'm unfamiliar with. And I know I've talked about this before with my internalized capitalism, because for the longest time, the way I perceived my worth was based on the results that I was achieving, which is so unhealthy, because I was perceiving myself not as a, and this will sound corny as shit, I was perceiving myself not as a human being, but as a human doing, because I was defining myself based on what I do rather than who I am. And I just, last year was a continuous cycle of burnout and a state of being overwhelmed. And while I'm a high functioning person, no matter my emotional state, I think I should allow myself to not be that if I cannot be that. And what I've been actively trying to do, and this, trust me, at first it really stressed me out because I felt very unproductive. And like I just said, my worth was equated to my productivity. What I've been trying to do is teach myself that taking a break is not only okay, it is crucial. It is a necessity and it is a must. So what I've been trying to do is every single week, because let's be real. Yes, I do try to take rests on a daily basis. I try to be conscious with my rest in a conscious state, like not just resting while I'm sleeping. But there are days when when I reflect on those stuff, I just want you to know that I'm explaining now the perfect scenario. Every single day is different. Some days I read 2 pages and I fall asleep. Some days I read 20 pages. Some days I work out. Some days I have to study until 2 a.m. after coming back from work at 9 p.m. And it's a struggle and I don't have the chance to work out. And not working out is something that's really challenging for me. But so, what I've been trying to do is to have a more continuous, lengthy break in a day of the week. And for me, that day is Sunday. And I've even been trying to not get as many shifts on the weekends so that I can actually rest, restart, reset, and just calm down, reflect on the week, and prepare myself mentally for the next one. So what I've been trying to do is I do whatever it is that I need to do until a certain hour on Sunday, depending on how much I have to finish. That may be 12, that may be 2, that may be 4, that may be 5, doesn't matter. And after that hour, I just rest. Whatever rest means that day. And rest can have many meanings. It can be sleep, it can be napping, it can be being active, going for a run, going for a walk, doing a hobby. And I won't lie, sometimes rest can even mean scrolling on your phone until your phone tells you your battery is running low. Is it a healthy coping mechanism? No. And is it one like I mentioned before, that I want to work on? Yes. I'm struggling with it, but I'm trying to. It's just I'm trying to teach myself. I'm just trying to bring up myself and the way I perceive myself. And I'm trying to perceive myself as someone who deserves to treat herself to a bit of break and reward myself after a well done job, after an overwhelming week, after a busy week. And last week, for the first time ever, that I think first time ever, period, I felt proud of what I had done that day, which was objectively a lot, because I always saw the things I do as something just to check off of a checklist, of a to-do list. But I shouldn't do that anymore. I don't think that's healthy. And I just think it further perpetuates this cycle of internalized capitalism and equating my worth to my productivity. And I'm not saying don't do a to-do list. I do to-do lists because the structure helps me to keep things under control when possible and just keep track. But just be reflective of your doings and beings, and not just of the completion of a task. And in the process, I am learning to be kinder to myself. I'm making the conscious effort to be kinder to myself. And I genuinely believe that this will help me be kinder to others. And because on Sunday I carve out this time frame of rest, I do, like I mentioned, things, whatever rest means that day, but something which I've been trying to implement as a Sunday night / evening ritual is if I have the chance to, I cook myself a nice meal, because I've been struggling a lot with eating properly this academic year because of this busyness. I hardly ever get the chance to cook because I come home very late and I just want something quick, so I just eat toast or something that I've bought like takeaway, which is not something I'm super happy about, but I can reflect on this in another episode. So I cook something for myself, I do a face mask, and I pick a nice movie and I just watch. And this to me is a ritual through which I have physical steps which symbolize to me that I am taking care of myself. I'm taking care of my skin, I'm taking care of my entertainment, and I'm taking care of nourishing my body. And to me, those things are just a compilation, a beautiful collage of self-care. And it is through them that I just lock and conceal the week and leave it on a positive note, a note in which I chose myself and decided to take care of myself and some of the needs which I neglected throughout the week for one reason or another. And quickly, before I let you go and before I go to sleep, because indeed I will be working on Saturday, I wanted to quickly reflect on the working out aspect. If any of you are struggling with body image or their workout regime, and you think you might find this last segment triggering, then I guess the episode ends for you here. Thank you for watching. See you next week, hopefully. Take care of yourself. So if you are interested, I can dive deeper into this in another episode, but I really didn't have a healthy relationship with working out for a long time. After I quit gymnastics, I devoted myself to home workouts, and I really did not develop a healthy relationship with them. I became obsessed with them, and if I did not do at least 5 1-hour workouts per week, I saw the week as a waste. I did not appreciate the fact that I spent 5 hours moving my body and just performing, like doing sport. I saw it as less than 6 hours. And this was something that led me to perceiving sport not as something I enjoyed anymore, but as a chore. And as something, again, simply that I had to check off the checklist, the to-do list. And over time, in a way, I became resentful and fell out of love with working out. And it took some time, it took a lot of effort, it took a lot of mental struggles, but I think I have been successfully rebuilding my relationship with sport. And now in this process of me learning to be kinder to myself, I'm trying to become kinder to myself when it comes to practicing sport. Because I was talking to a friend and she had a nutritionist and a gym coach, like a trainer, personal trainer. And when she was talking to them and they were building her regime, and they were like, okay, this is your regime, 3 workouts a week. And she was like, what do you mean 3 workouts? And they're like, do you perceive this as little or as few or as a lot? And she obviously, well, not obviously, but because she's very like-minded to me in that aspect, she said, I perceive this as very few workouts, as not enough for an entire week. Because up until now, I've been working out 5 days a week at minimum, and dialing it back to only 3 workouts a week feels like a step back rather than as a step forward. And they told her this, which I've been trying to reflect on myself as someone who is very busy and very overwhelmed right now, because who would have thought that doing a master's while working 30 hours a week would be demanding and the days will be long? And yeah, I'm going to be very real with you. My life is very overwhelming right now because of this business, and at times I really struggle to cope with it, and I struggle to manage with it. But because of this carving out of time for pleasure, for rest, for play, for hobbies, despite me being busier than last year, I feel better because I take the time to choose myself in spite of myself or because of myself. My emotions feel way more regulated despite me being overwhelmed, despite me being overworked. I feel calmer and more at peace and at balance and more harmonious than I did last year. And if that's all it brings me, this journey is a very rewarding one then. And what they told her, what her personal trainer, what her nutritionist told her was like, you do realize that as you grow older, and let's say you have a career, and my friend, and she's one of the people who listens to the podcast, so shout out, she's going to be a lawyer. And lawyers have very long days. And let's say she builds a family, she has a relationship that she needs to tend to, like she has to tend to the everyday chores of cleaning, cooking, grocery shopping, commuting, going to work, going to university, just being busy. And they brought up the fact that this business does not dial down. It just doesn't diminish. And it is a more realistic goal to say, I am going to work out 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week. Because if you're anything like me, and if you don't work out, let's say 5 days a week, at least, you would perceive the week as a failure. Whereas with 3 workouts a week, which 3 workouts a week can be sufficient. And as long as you perform good, effective workouts, 3 workouts a week is still a good amount of working out. It gives you more wiggle room. It gives you more flexibility because it's easier to fit 3 days into 7 than 5 days into 7, you know? And I think once she told me this, something in my brain changed. And now I am more forgiving myself, because I used to work out from Monday to Friday. My rest days were Saturday and Sunday, but also sometimes I would work out on Saturday and sometimes on Sunday. And now, for example, on Monday, if I have lectures from 9 to 3 and work from 4 to 9 and I go home at 10 and I have not cooked, I have not eaten anything but fast food from the fast food chain I work at, and I feel like a complete piece of shit and I only want to work out, but I'm exhausted because I've been on since the morning and I just cannot be productive and cannot function anymore. I am learning to be forgiving and to be accepting of that and be okay with this, rather than what I did in the beginning of the academic year, work out at midnight. Because that's just not healthy. And I'm not saying sport is not healthy. I'm saying my approach to the situation wasn't. And I am trying to come to terms with the fact that my life, the way it is now at this stage of my life, is busy. And it's only becoming busier. And I, in this business, need to carve out time for rest, carve out time for pleasure, for sport, for kindness towards myself, and what is more, for forgiveness towards myself. And I think that if I manage to master those stuff, which is a very big ask, a very big chunk that I don't know if I'll be able to swallow yet, because it's a process, it's a learning process with a lot of setbacks, a lot of, 1 step forward, 3 steps back. But I think that as long as I'm committed to this, as long as I'm conscious of it, I am on the right track. I want to give meaning to my life. I want my life to be more than what degree I'm going to have and what I do to earn my money so that I can obtain that degree. I want my life to be something, and ironically, something I don't need a break from. I want to achieve a balance of life that I don't see my life as something on a to-do list, but I see it as something not scheduled, but as something I don't have to do, but as something I get the privilege to do. I don't know. I'm becoming too abstract. I'm becoming too, I don't know what. So I think we just leave it at this for now. If I have any further updates, I will let you know. Obviously, I will always and forever keep you in the loop. But until then, I want to thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it made you reflect on some stuff. I hope maybe it inspired some of you to do something, to go pick a hobby. Literally, go bake. Go bake. Go for a walk. When was the last time you took a picture of the sky? Yeah, that's what I thought. Go for a walk and take a picture of the sky. But until you do that, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, stay hydrated, wear sunscreen, and don't support genocide. Bye.